Welcome to the Critic and the Pleb. I'm Ben, I'm the critic.
And I'm Caitlin, I'm the plebe. This is a podcast where we take turns choosing movies to offer our different perspectives and to hopefully entertain and or inform you all.
A brief warning. This podcast may contain adult content and will definitely contain spoilers. If you haven't seen the film in the episode title and don't want anything given away, please go see the film first and come back later to listen.
Woody? Why am I alive? You are a toy. You belong to Bonnie. These are your friends.
Woody, I have a question. Well, actually, not just one. I have all the questions.
Who wants to go on a road trip?
Me!
Vacation! You need help with that?
No, I got it. I know, this is a little strange, but we all have to make sure nothing happens to Forky.
Something happened to him.
Buzz, we gotta get Forky. Roger that.
I know the perfect toy to help.
Duke Kaboom, Canada's greatest stuntman. Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
He's posing.
Yeah.
Duke, we need
Hold
to...
on. One more. Oh, yeah.
Hold on!
Woody'll save me. I've known that guy my whole life. 2 days.
All right, so this week, I, the plebe, got to choose the movie. I was very excited about this, and I chose Toy Story 4. This film was released on June 21st, 2019, directed by Josh Cooley. We have Tom Hanks returning as Woody, Tim Allen returning as Buzz Lightyear, Annie Potts voicing Bo Peep, and I would say those are probably the big three characters. We also have some other notable names just kind of along in the cast, along for the ride. Patricia Arquette voices Harmony's mother in the movie. There's Jordan and Keegan-Michael Key, Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael Key in there playing Ducky and Barry. So a really great cast, lots of fun there.
Letterboxd just says, Woody has always been confident about his place in the world and that his priority is taking care of his kid, whether that's Andy or Bonnie. But when Bonnie adds a reluctant new toy called Forky to her room, a road trip adventure alongside old and new friends will show Woody how the big world can be for a toy.
The main reason I wanted to choose this movie is, any Disney Pixar movie is a movie that I'm going to want to see. We both grew up in the 90s, which was right in the midst of the Disney Renaissance. So I think for me, and probably for many other 90s babies, Disney is synonymous with quality. Disney is usually going to put out a really great animated movie. It's very nostalgic to watch animated movies, and I've always loved them. So for that fact alone, I was excited to see this movie. And the Toy Story franchise has always been consistently good. I did think that Toy Story 3 wrapped off the original trilogy really well. It had a really powerful ending. So did we need a Toy Story 4? Maybe not. Obviously, Disney Pixar knows that this is a successful franchise and one that's going to make them a lot of money. So it's probably a very attractive option for them to continue making those kinds of movies. But I was nevertheless very excited to see what they would do with Toy Story 4 and how it would unfold.
I've also been preparing for Toy Story 4 as well. Over the past week, I have rewatched the entire trilogy. I grew up with them, but I hadn't actually seen them since I was a little kid, dressing up as Woody for Halloween and playing with the toys and everything like that. So it was nice to revisit Toy Story. It was nice to revisit Toy Story 2, which Caitlin watched those two along with me. Mm-hmm. And it was heartbreaking to revisit Toy Story 3 because that is one that came out when I was about to go to college, just like Andy back in 2010. I went with my parents. Everybody was crying in the theater, and I was crying rewatching Toy Story 3. And that really brings up the main question for me that I had going in, because when Toy Story 4 was announced, I was skeptical. I felt cynical about it, because after the finale of Toy Story 3, it really needed to justify its own existence. That was the number one thing that Toy Story 4 needed to do for me. And we just need to really start off by talking about that. I guess overall, did this justify its existence? Or is it just a cash grab? What do you think?
I think if it didn't end up being a good movie and if it didn't add anything to the characters' stories, then I would definitely say that, yeah, it wasn't necessary. But I think the characters grow and change and develop in this movie, particularly Woody, who's been the main character throughout the entire series and the one that we kind of follow, the main protagonist. I think he has a really important journey in this film, and that journey being really moving on and how difficult that can be in a variety of different ways. And I think exploring that idea, the aftermath, because in Toy Story 3 it did end in a really beautiful way, and we see him kind of giving up his life with Andy and moving on to this new toy with his family, but we don't see the aftermath of that moving on, and that's often a bigger part of, you know, grieving or a big change of something like that. It's not just the moment where you specifically move on, it's that journey afterwards.
They do a beautiful job of establishing where Woody is at in Bonnie's room, because he is not the toy on top anymore. He's not the leader. I don't know what the character's name is in Bonnie's room, but she is clearly the leader. She knows the ins and outs of Bonnie's life. She knows how the parents operate in the house. And we have Woody uncomfortably playing second banana to the people in command in Bonnie's room. He's not a jerk about it or anything, but you can tell that he wants to do more, but that he's just not where he once was. He's not the favorite toy anymore. He's one among many. So we see him feel out of place, and we see him needing to move on to a different phase. And like you're saying, I feel definitely that Woody does have a wonderful story in this film. And that's definitely the character that this movie serves the most. Bo Peep is another one that they definitely serve, because we get to have Bo Peep back. We see the culmination of her character, and we'll talk a bit more about her later on. That's definitely something that we both wanted to get into. But I would say overall that really those are the only two characters that we get anything from in Toy Story 4. And I would say that that's something that, to me, was mildly disappointing. It didn't ruin the movie for me, but it was mildly disappointing.
What about Gabby Gabby, though? And the other toys out in the world, the free toys or the lost toys or whatever you want to call them, and all of the toys that are trapped in the antique store.
I guess this is a good chance to just talk about new characters in general. So the first new character that we're introduced to is Forky.
Yeah,
What
good
do
old
you
Forky.
think of Forky?
I think Forky is funny, and I think really the point of Forky is almost to bring up the discussion of what is the role of a toy, and why is having a toy important, and why is that relationship important, and Woody is kind of desperately trying to explain to Forky, even though you didn't want to be made into a toy, even though you were meant to be trash. Lots of really funny conversations and just really funny slapstick moments of Woody constantly trying to throw Forky back into Bonnie's life because Forky literally keeps trying to run away from it. I think is really funny. Those moments were very effective for me humor-wise. But I think Forky's existence is really there to help Woody kind of process those feelings of what does it mean to be a toy? Why is that important for our lives as toys and for the lives of the kids that we serve? What kid hasn't made like a little stick figure or something out of just craft supplies? And honestly, Forky is probably destined for the trash at some point in his future, but he can have meaning during the points in between. It's kind of an interesting meaning of life discussion.
That brings to mind what I thought was a great highlight of the film, Randy Newman's song, I Won't Let You Throw Yourself Away, which I feel ranks right up there with the other songs that he's made throughout the rest of the series. I thought it was a terrific song. It worked on a couple different levels, like we're talking about with Forky. It makes you reflect on mental illness, honestly, or at least that's what it made me think about. I think of friends with depression, family members with depression, and that song, just I Won't Let You Throw Yourself Away, feels pretty uplifting. I think Ducky and Bunny are the ones to dive into next. What do
That
you
was
think about-
actually, that was going to be one of my talking points, because I think the introduction of them as characters was a brilliant choice. I don't know if there's another duo in Hollywood that has as amazing of chemistry as Key and Peele. Just any time that they are in something, I think it elevates it. It just makes anything better. They're so funny. They're so charming. Everything that they do in that movie, and you can tell it feels like a lot of the things that they do were their idea, and it's so fun. It just works so well, and it makes the movies very charming.
I feel like they definitely took a note from the Robin Williams Aladdin playbook, where the animators might have watched them riff a little bit. They had
Improvise.
Exactly, just improvise, and they built the characters around their improvisations. That would be my assumption.
That's definitely how it felt. Because when you just watch Bunny and Ducky moving around and the way they are talking to each other and interacting with each other, I can easily see Key and Peele doing that in real life.
For me, inevitably, they took the mantle of best new characters in the movie.
They were wonderful.
But one quick thing, a couple of new characters that I was not really fazed by. Duke Kaboom, who felt like warmed over Ken.
True.
And then the little McGiggle cop lady, she really had nothing to do. She's like one of Bo Peep's sidekicks. I think those two were just there for action function, and I can't see myself quoting them or thinking about them anytime soon.
I think it's hard because up to this point, a lot of the new toys that have ever been introduced are toys that we would have grown up with and that we would have played with as kids. But those toys are supposed to be lost toys, old toys, antique toys. So I don't think there's that immediate nostalgic connection. Like, we already have a connection with Ken and Barbie. We've played with those as kids. But it's harder to do that with Duke Kaboom.
Duke Kaboom could just be a chance to tap into that lucrative Canadian box office.
Is that an actual lucrative box office?
I don't really
I can't
know.
tell if you're being sarcastic or not.
I'm not sure if it is or not, but I'm sure that Duke Kaboom would certainly draw those Canucks in.
I did appreciate, and I think everyone in the theater that we were in appreciated, that the Giggle Cop or whatever referenced Minneapolis at one point. Did you catch that?
I did.
She said she was a cop in Minneapolis, and everyone in our theater was like, because we're in Minnesota.
The toy that we've been waiting to discuss is Gabby Gabby. In the trailers, Gabby Gabby appears to be another copy of the archetypal bad toy. In Toy Story 2, you have Stinky Pete, the prospector. In Toy Story 3, you have Lotso Huggin' Bear at the daycare. It seems from the outset that Gabby Gabby will fit into that mold. I was rolling my eyes, honestly, because I thought it was just going to be a rehash of Stinky Pete, a rehash of Lotso, and I didn't expect it to subvert my expectations, which Gabby Gabby ends up doing in, I feel, a really interesting way.
I thought Gabby Gabby was an extremely successful character. She plays the role of a lost toy and an abandoned toy. Like, not just a lost toy, like a toy that accidentally got left behind. This is a toy that was rejected from the start, kind of like Lotso and Stinky Pete. Just, they've never had that child, and if they have, it ended in being given away or rejected, and that just hurt them for the rest of their lives. And the reason for her rejection is she says she was defective out of the box, and her voice cord never worked. So when Woody comes along and she notices that he has a voice cord that does work, that you can pull it, and his actually works, she's immediately wants to basically rip it out of him. And we get that kind of sense of a villain, and Gabby Gabby runs this antique store with an iron fist, kind of like how Lotso ran the preschool with an iron fist. So I agree there's like that nice parallel there, but I really appreciate how developed they made her character, and I really felt really bad for her. I felt really sorry for her because she's watching other kids that come into this antique store and just dreaming about what she could have and like pretending to have tea parties on the side. I think one of the hardest things to ever deal with in life is rejection. It's extremely, extremely hard. It's one of my biggest fears, and I think it's a big fear of so many people, is just being rejected for who you are. And Gabby Gabby felt rejected from the very start. And dealing with that pain, it's something that she it happens to her multiple times. It's not something that she's been rejected once. She's been in this antique store for a long time being overlooked. And so I think it's natural for her to get to a point where she is so frustrated and so hurt that she starts to almost hurt others.
For a good 2/3 of the movie, she's sending her ventriloquist dummy henchmen to literally rip out the voice box from Woody's back. But a nice twist happens in the last third of the movie, the final act.
Where she and Woody kind of have a heart-to-heart about what it means to be a lost and or rejected toy, and he ends up really empathizing with her and kind of choosing to give her a voice.
Which is another interesting development for Woody, just that sacrifice that he makes.
That was actually one of the talking points that I wanted to discuss, is how much of this movie was in character for Woody. I think throughout the entire series, Woody has kind of this interesting pull of motivations. Especially in the first one, he is very selfish and he's very me-centric. And like, this is the way things are supposed to be. I'm the favorite toy. You need to kind of listen to me. In the second movie, he still does that at times. I mean, in Toy Story 2, when he's deciding to go back to Andy, or when he's deciding to stay with the other cowboy toys. I mean, it's all, he's not always thinking about other toys around him. He does often think about himself. And not that that's a bad thing, but I think then there are times when Woody is seen as the hero toy who never leaves other toys behind. It's called loyalty. He says all of these things that make him also seem like family is the most important thing to him, and his family is these toys that he's been with the entire time. So I was almost surprised to see what happens with Woody at the end, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, but Woody's journey to the very end almost seemed out of character to me at first, but I think it was kind of an expression of his battling inner thoughts. Do I do what's best for me, or do I do what's best for the other toys?
I feel like the end of the movie, when he does choose to go off with Bo Peep and her crew of lost toys, leaving his bigger family of toys behind, it's kind of a nice reconciliation between those two forces, because he's kind of served his time in the child's rooms. He's served Andy, he's served Bonnie, he's been there. He's done the most noble thing a toy can do, which is bring joy to a child. But he also is not happy as an individual anymore doing that. He's kind of tired of that phase of his life, as we can see at the beginning, like we talked about with him being second banana and not the leader. With the lost toys at the end, he has the opportunity to actually save other toys. He has the opportunity to have some individual agency, to feel like he has a purpose and a mission, and use the skills that he's accrued over his life to really do good works.
This movie is finally the point where he's actually able to do both things. Like, he's doing what's best for himself when he decides to go with Bo Peep. That's where he knows he's probably going to be happiest. Because when he's in Bonnie's room, we see at the very beginning, he's not really being played with. The other toys in the closet make fun of him for getting his first dust bunny. Like, he's not really being played with anymore, and he's to the point where he is kind of an antique toy now. He thinks he was made somewhere in the 50s, and it's now the early 2000s, 2000 teens. Like, he has kind of served his time. So moving on is in his best interest for him, he feels, but he is also able to continue helping other toys find homes and find that noble purpose of being with a kid and being there for a kid, even if he isn't himself.
Along with Woody, we talked about that Bo Peep certainly has a satisfying character as well. We didn't see Bo Peep in Toy Story 3 because she had disappeared for some reason, and we didn't know in Toy Story 3 what that whole story was. Toy Story 4 opens with the night that she was taken away, and then when we see her later on in Toy Story 4, midway through their RV trip, she has attained this level of independence. She has attained this level of really badassery that was hitherto unforeseen for her.
I love Bo Peep as a character, and that was something I wanted to talk about a lot, is that, I mean, once Bo Peep is introduced, to the very end of the film, it took me about like halfway between when she was introduced to the end to realize what a cool female heroine she is. And I really like that it took me a while to realize, oh wait, she is a woman, because I think we're at this really interesting time in history right now where women want to be recognized as equal as men, obviously. And Hollywood's reaction to that sometimes is to create a just like token badass female character, and they really shove it in your face how much of a feminist icon she should be. And they overdo it to the point where it doesn't even feel natural, and it doesn't even feel like they feel like she should be considered equal. But Bo Peep is just, she comes in, she's naturally competent, she's independent, she is still extremely caring. She does all of the things that a male hero does, but nobody needs to talk about because, of course, that hero should be there doing those things. She does all of those, but is still a female character. I just really appreciate that representation, that she's running the show. I mean, without her, Woody would be in real trouble. She is really the driving force in getting anything done in this movie. So I appreciate how strong of a character she is, but I also appreciate that it's not shoved in our faces.
When I was reflecting on the film last night and writing my Letterboxd review, I found myself almost getting into nitpicky mode a little bit. But at the same time, I feel like it isn't nitpicky, because the movie really only serves those three characters. We are left with a whole gang of toys that we're used to and that we've gotten to know over the past 24 years that are really left with nothing to do. Even Buzz Lightyear, I feel like they've lost track of Buzz's character completely in this movie. In this one, Buzz feels like he is back at the stage of somewhere between the first Toy Story and the second Toy Story, where he is still a spaceman. He's almost like Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel like, when Woody convinces him to listen to his inner voice and Buzz is just pressing his buttons the whole time to tell him what to do. It was very out of character for Buzz to not know what to do and to not be in leader mode. Buzz has never had an issue with that throughout the entire series, and all of a sudden he's reverted back to this state of space toy cluelessness that really didn't mesh with the character's earned development throughout the series preceding this.
And I definitely agree that he was written in kind of an odd way, because he is written to be a little bit more conflicted. I think part of me needs to say that this isn't Buzz's story. Buzz hasn't served his purpose yet as a toy. He still has many years, probably, of being loved and used as a toy, so he doesn't really have any internal conflicts to be going through right now. His role essentially is to be kind of Woody's best friend and help Woody through that internal conflict. He's there for Woody, and he does manage to get to Woody and find him by using his inner voice. I think it was more there as just a funny shtick. I feel like focusing on the internal journeys of those three main characters, Bo Peep, Gabby Gabby, and Woody, is more important than all of the other toys also needing a storyline. There's a lot of toys, and if they all have kind of moments, then that makes things really complicated. But also, I would say that the other toys are very important because they are the ones that help get Woody to where he needs to be. They're working as a family. There's a lot of funny moments where they're like, let's get Dad arrested. And they really take over the camper. They take over the GPS. They pop tires. Like, they're doing things to help Woody. It's not their story. They're there to support him. And they're all still being used as toys. None of them have been left behind yet. So I don't think they need to go on that journey.
I'm not asking for giant journeys of development for each and every toy. Like Mr. Pricklepants doesn't need to have a giant arc in this movie. But I think back to the other movies, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, and even minor characters within their subplots were still able to have kind of mini arcs. I think the best example of this is Toy Story 2 with Rex, because Rex at the beginning of the movie in Andy's room in Toy Story 2 is trying to beat Zurg on this video game. And as he goes to save Woody from Al and the toy barn, he is inadvertently gaining these skills that help him beat Zurg later on when he gets back. And that's a little thing, and it's played for jokes, but at the same time, it's like, okay, there's something that I can care about this character. He's not just there for mere plot service. He's actually growing a little bit from this. Even if it's kind of funny, even if it's small, there's still some development. Barbie in Toy Story 3 even has a bit more than a lot of the side characters do in Toy Story 4. So I guess that's just a level of quality I expected, that I've come to expect from the franchise, that wasn't quite present in this installment.
Just as a rebuttal to that, say that we've kind of seen development from all of those other toys. Like, those are Andy's toys, and I think this movie is more about moving on. So those toys are continuing to kind of do their thing, and most of the development we see is from toys that are either transitioning or toys that have already moved on. New toys that we haven't even been introduced to that we are introduced to in this movie.
I think there's definitely a world where they could have had both, because the past movies have been able to balance theme with an ensemble cast of characters. But we can agree to disagree there. The next thing that we should talk about is the climax of the movie. I feel like the climax of the movie was constructed in kind of a messy way. It felt like there were so many reversals and quick little twists and moments set up for suspense. There were like 10 of those moments smashed in to the climax of this movie. I felt it was getting to the point of diminishing returns. Did you have that feeling where it was just, oh, now this and now this? And I felt it got to the point where I just felt sort of exhausted sitting on the edge of my seat, not engaged sitting on the edge of my seat.
I really did not get that at all. I really enjoyed the action sequence, and I think it makes sense that it doesn't go perfectly throughout the whole thing. I mean, there should be reversals, and they have to redo their plan and retry. I don't think in real life there's ever a time when your plan's going to go perfectly, and then you just kind of keep moving on. I think that'd be too simple. But I really liked the action sequence in the antique store. I think it's supposed to feel messy because it's a very crowded place. There's tons of things going on. You've got the cat, you've got the creepy dummies, Benson. I think the hectic, chaotic nature of it is what makes it exciting, and it makes sense for me given the setting.
Well, that might have just been me then. But the very end, when Woody is going to stay with Bo Peep and leaves the other toys behind, I thought that was fantastic from an emotional standpoint, because Pixar, you're so used to having these weepy endings. You think of Coco as the most recent example of that. When you go into a Pixar movie, you're primed for characters to be sad at the end, for tears to come out, or that's the stereotype at least, and that's what I was expecting. But at the moment where Woody is leaving his family to go to the Lost Toy faction with Bo Peep, there's a little pause where we see all their faces, but then when the decision is made, when he says that he's going, they are happy. They smile, and they go crowd on. They basically just dogpile on him and hug him and are happy about this change. They're welcoming it, as opposed to grieving it and being morose, or having like a sad Bullseye wanting to go with him or something like that. You know, it's not a moment of sadness. It is a moment of celebration, which I thought was unique for an animated film and for a film in general.
And I think that's exactly how it should have been. That was kind of my last talking point, is how powerful the ending was. I was crying. That's kind of how I gauge how well a Pixar movie does for me. If I'm crying at the end, then it probably hit me on a deeper emotional level and did something more than just tell a cool animated story. This definitely hit me there. If you look at it just kind of symbolically, it's kind of describing that moment of when somebody important to you does need to move on. Obviously, there's kind of the cycles of grief. you have to grieve, like, knowing that you might not ever see that person again. And you get to that point of acceptance and just remembering the happy memories and knowing that they're going on doing things that are going to be ultimately better for them.
Where do you stand as far as a grade for Toy Story 4?
I really had no problems with this movie. I always start my grades high and I take away based on how many problems I have with it. I had no problems with this one, and I feel very confident giving it an A, honestly. I really enjoyed the story. I thought it added on to the original 3 Toy Story movies well, and that was important. It needed to do that in order to get a good grade from me. It couldn't have detracted from the original 3. I thought it added on nicely. I thought Woody's arc made sense. It was pretty funny. It was more funny than I expected it to be. And we didn't talk about how much better it looks than the original trilogy. Obviously, the animation was in its early stages when Toy Story 1 came out, but they have gotten steadily better, and the people are definitely not nearly as creepy looking as they used to be in the earlier movies. It was visually very appealing. I loved the characters, and I really appreciated the deep emotional connections that we got out of it. So I'd give it an A. I was happy with it.
Overall, I was happy with it too. I would agree that the animation is more gorgeous than it's ever been, and that they have finally gotten to the point where they have animated a human being that looks like a human being, that feels like a human being, that I felt for as much as I feel for the toy characters, which is difficult for a lot of animated humans. But I feel like Bonnie, the little girl Bonnie, is a testament to how far they've come with animating human beings, because that was wonderful, and I felt for her every time that she was on screen. I still do have a couple of reservations because of the character work and really getting only 3 as opposed to feeling like this is an entire family affair. I still have some problems with the third act, not with the Gabby Gabby reversal and subversion. I enjoyed that. That needed to happen to make this stand out among the series. But I still feel like there were a lot of ups and downs where it did come to the point of diminishing returns for me. Overall, it was a unique ending. I loved seeing Woody move on in a satisfying way. And before this recording, I was at a B, but I was right at the border of a B and a B+. Thinking about it more, discussing this, I'm moving more into the B+ range. I think definitely a solid B+. B.
Party pooper.
Where does it rank for you as far as the entire series?
I still think the third Toy Story is probably my favorite. I'd say the second one is probably still in 4th place for me. I still really enjoy the second one. If I'm comparing them to one another, I would say that we probably have Toy Story 3, Toy Story 1, Toy Story 4, Toy Story 2. But Toy Story 1 and 4 are essentially even with one another. I think it could change day to day depending on my mood.
As of this recording, I'd rank them 3, 2, 1, 4. Not that any of them are bad. In fact, this may be the strongest franchise that's gotten up to 4 installments that I can think of as far as consistency. We can agree that this has been an amazing series, a fundamental series for our childhoods, really for my empathy. I feel like I wouldn't have the same level of empathy that I do without the Toy Story series and without growing up with Toy Story.
I think that's all.
All right. So as of right now, the next episode is either going to be a joint pick or my pick. And I'm not totally sure what my pick is going to be next, but I can assure you that it will be one of critical acumen, of great acclaim, and cinematic relevance.
All right, thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. We really appreciate it. Feel free to follow us on Letterboxd, where we have information about these podcasts that we've been doing and the grades for our movies. Feel free to like this video, subscribe on YouTube, and hit that notification bell if you are interested in hearing more.
And I still need to think of a good sign-off for the podcast, but for now, we'll see you at the movies. But I really got to fix that.